it's once in a lifetime if we're, recording and going forward now.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. Yeah.
The book is called Once in a Lifetime, and it takes place in the 80s, of course, which is our favorite decade.
Absolutely.
And it has a lot of musical references because these are new wave girls in the book. So
nice. Well, since we are recording, I'm going to go ahead and do an actual intro, because I've been doing that, except I didn't do it last week. I don't think. I don't remember. Anyway, it was like 7 days ago. But, I am recording, so I see that we've been recording, and I have to tell you that you let everyone know that they're being recorded.
I'm sorry.
That's so funny. Skype.
Just checking.
Anyway, so all right, here I go. Hey everybody, it's 80s Music Girl, sans the one and only Lisamarie. She had to work today, so I am flying solo once again, and my guest today on Looking Back is the one and only, not Lisamarie, but the one and only Suzanne Mattaboni. Oh my gosh, former co-host of our show. I just forgot. Holy shit. Ro, come on.
Our Bonsai Retro. Yeah, Bonsai Retro Club. Yay.
Hi, Suzanne. Stop.
Hi. Hi. So great to get on the line together again and get to talk.
This is great. And I'm so happy for you with all of your accolades for your new book. And we're going to talk about that, in a few minutes. And I actually just kind of want to know how things have been going. And where have you been? Where have you been these past few months?
Well, I'm still here. I'm out in Pennsylvania, but but I've been, getting around to some different book festivals and such in the area, and just doing a lot of podcasts. I mean, from all over the place. I had one I did with someone in South Africa which was interesting. So those kind of stretch all over the place, all over the country. But there's a lot of cool podcasters out there. I've been meeting a lot of great people all over the country.
Yeah, it is definitely has become a culture, and because I am who I am, I have no preconceived notions about how these things should go. So I it's like a chat. It's just you and I chatting, or whoever else, is involved. And I think it gives a more relaxed environment as opposed to something that's scripted. Not that there's anything wrong, with being scripted. I know there's a lot of people who kind of have to, roll that way because they're involved with a network or a franchise or whatever it is they're doing. But, this is a mom and daughter operation, and we just pretty much do what we want. So, and we invite people. Yeah, we invite people to listen. If they don't want to, that's okay. Because it's not going anywhere. Eventually, it'll be on a platform, and then I'll be annoying to more people than ever. So that'll be great. So I know. Last week we were going to schedule this, and you had a book festival to go to, correct?
Yes. Yeah, actually, that was one that went for 2 weekends and the whole week in between. And there were different things going on throughout the town of Easton, Pennsylvania, once again on the Delaware River, the same river in the book, just a little further north. But Easton, Pennsylvania, which is right on the border of New Jersey. Yes. And they had different things going on throughout the whole week at different times. It wasn't like contiguous, just every single day. Every hour, but for both weekends, people from the writing groups out here were doing book signings and such. So it was kind of nice. We were set up right on the river. It was a beautiful view. It was nice.
Wow, and the weather held up pretty well because you guys get older sooner than we do. Right?
We usually do. It doesn't seem to be happening this year. It was beautiful. Both weekends, It was beautiful.
Okay, that's awesome.
Still pretty warm this weekend, but it's rainy, so it's not the same.
Yeah, it's kind of rainy here and windy. We've had a lot of wind. We lost power, was it yesterday, because of the wind, but it came right back on, which was great. But my history with Pennsylvania is pretty minimal, I think, because first husband was from New York, and being in the service, and my first child was actually born at the Naval Hospital in Philadelphia because New Jersey, because I was stationed at New Jersey, we didn't have an obstetrician at the hospital, so we had to travel in a van 45 minutes into Philadelphia from Fort Dix, New Jersey. It's like every month. It slowly got more regular as you got closer to your term date, and then it was actually kind of interesting. I don't know, maybe not so much when I had to deliver the baby and we had to go there, and then of course my husband at the time is driving. We're on the turnpike, I think, I can't even remember, and then driving through just like suburb cities, trying to get there, and he's got his hazard lights on, he's running red lights, and I'm just, why are you doing that? He's like, this is an emergency, and I'm just like, yeah, okay, I don't really think so, but if the police catch us, then you can explain that to them. It actually seemed kind of, in retrospect, it actually seemed kind of not necessary, because when I got there, it was like 8 o'clock in the morning, and I didn't have the baby until 2:30 that afternoon. So,
well, you made it in time at least.
Yeah, I was on time for sure, but it's hard.
Well, Philadelphia and New Jersey kind of share a little bit of culture there. They're kind of a metro area of themselves because they're just right across the river from each other. In fact, the original title of the book was "Excuse Me, Waitress, Is That New Jersey?" Well, everybody laughs. I would have liked to keep it, but powers that be suggested otherwise. So now it's once in a lifetime.
Do you put it in the book, though? I mean, did you manage to squeeze that in?
Yes, because that's the thing is the girls are waitressing in a tourist town right on the river, and people always had the tendency to ask, "Oh, is that New Jersey? Excuse me, waitress, is that New Jersy?" And they don't kind of laugh, because like the townies are like, "What do you think it is?"
Exactly.
It's Afghanistan.
Yeah, no, it's both. It's whatever, something that because somebody believe it regardless of what you tell them. So, so like I said, I felt very proud of myself reading the first chapter. I should have read the whole book, but I'm just, I've been listening to Audible books. Oh, and that was my question. See, rabbit trail. Mm-hmm. If you decide to do an Audible book, are you going to narrate it?
That'd be fun, but I think just like to use the audiobook as a marketing tool, I'd like to maybe get somebody who has a following to read it.
Yeah. Okay.
So like maybe people will pick it up who like that Audible narrator. I hear that's a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been listening to a lot of Audible books lately, and I've just, I always think, sometimes like when Neil Gaiman narrated the Graveyard Book, I don't know if you've ever read that. And
no, but I'm kind of a fan of his.
Yeah, it's actually really good. The story is amazing. First of all, to even come up with something like that is just, fabulous. And then, to hear him, do all the characters and everything. And I thought, I didn't really want to listen to it at first because I just got through listening to Martin Jarvis narrate Good Omens. And, it was a nice, because he's like a professional, and he does like everybody, he can do all the accents, American, wherever, whatever country the characters are from. And then, Neil Gaiman is kind of like, do I want to listen? I don't know. And then I finally did, and I'm like, okay. I gave him a second chance, and he sounded really good. So, but yeah, so,
glad I can handle that.
Yeah, yeah. So to get back to why you're really here. Why are you here, Suzanne? So wrapping it back up to full circle from my original statement, if you remember 15 minutes ago. If you listen to the podcast or anyone's listened to the podcast yet, you know that it has a companion playlist that goes along with it. Now, whatever songs, we talk about, I go back in and listen after, the podcast's over, and then I write them down, and then I find them on Spotify, and, I pop them in a playlist, and then I send it along with the podcast. So,
very cool. Very
I,
cool.
I, I just thought, it's easier to do it that way than to try to have, I don't want any copyright issues with anyone, for the podcast. So if there was an opportunity for me to do that, I just jumped on it. My last guest is a friend of mine from Wales, and he's like a music historian, and he's very, very well known in the gay community over there in Swansea. And he's helped to create a lot of community efforts, and he's just really been a mainstay there, within the last 12 years. And so he knows so much about, 80s music and the different, new wave bands and things that he hit me to a lot of different bands that I didn't know anything about. And then he also was a catalyst in helping me get my first DJ, my own radio show back in 2012. And I was very grateful for him for that. But the playlist that we ended up with was 4 hours and 47 minutes long. So that's how much music he and I talked about. Whereas the regular one, like with my son and I, my daughter, and things like that, probably the most was like 2 hours. I think Weird Al was 2 hours when I did it with, my son. But we talked about other, it doesn't necessarily matter what the subject is. It's just, when you're talking, I don't know if you have this where you get a song trigger. Do you do song triggers? Like somebody mentions a word, like earlier you said it was a riverside town or something, and I think it's seaside town, Morrissey, every day's like Sunday kind of a thing. So I
that kind of stuff happens in my brain. I don't know that I have it like recorded anywhere.
Well, no, but I'm just saying, do you like speak it out? I mean, do you like if someone's talking to you and they mention something, do you automatically go, "Ooh, Spandau Ballet"?
A lot of times I do, and really throughout the book, that's the way the girls talk. Except that because of these copyright issues and such, you have to kind of work around that, which is kind of a shame. But of course, I mean, it's the other people's kind of brilliant intellectual property, so I get it. But in reality, this is the way people talk. They will refer to those lyrics and such.
Yeah. Good.
So there's a lot of references to the songs, and some of them are more subtle and Easter eggy than others. But a lot of the titles are mentioned, because you can mention titles. You can't copyright a title, which is why there's it has a title that's recognizable.
Right, which is great, because I couldn't remember it, and I felt bad because I was talking to my daughter last week, and then on that podcast, and I'm like, I'm going to have to cut that out because I sound really stupid right now. Why can't I remember the name of her book? I know it has something to do with talking heads. And
there you go.
Yeah, and then it, of course, then it dawned on me afterwards. It always does, and I was like, shoot, yeah, we'll cut that. We'll cut that.
Okay, if you say so.
I'm really not that dumb, people. So it's like, once I figured it out, it's like, God, Rose, you're an idiot. But
well, if I had to pick an anthem, and not use the funny title that I actually wanted to use, this was kind of where I thought the book was, went as far as philosophy goes to this song. So.
Yeah, and it's I would say retrospect. It's kind of foreshadowing in a way, because not only is it once in a lifetime for them, but it's once in a lifetime for you, because you wrote the book.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, so I think that's really kudos, my friend.
Yeah, layers. Thank you.
I'm an open onion. What can I say? But so in the 80s, you were a child in the 80s, correct?
Well, it depends on when in the 80s that you go back to. When the 80s started, I was like 15 or 16. Okay. So by the time I was not a child, by the time it was over. But
all right. Okay, that's what I was wanting. I was going to skirt around the issue. I didn't want to come out and say, how old were you in the 80s? But that would be
Well,
a rough estimate. I think that's great. So you, okay. Yeah, because I was like 20 when the 80s started, and I was in Germany. And so that was like a completely different culture and experience, because it was the first time I'd ever been away from home that far.
mhm.
So, you
And
know,
that was in service.
yeah, I was in the Army. And so when I'm reading the book and I'm like, you were going to study art in London, and I was just like, my God, are you sure we weren't separated at birth? That is
I wonder that sometimes too with all the song choices that we seem to have that match, and the singing and that kind of stuff.
Oh, I know. I was telling my daughter, I was like, oh my gosh, she used to have like little shows that she would put on, and her friends would, have like,
Right.
all these little musicals that they would do. I was like, it's just amazing. I just, I would have thoughts like that, but I never really had anyone to, pander to my whims. So it was.
Well, I tried to get them to do it. They didn't always do it.
This is true. Sometimes friends are a little, their own, what do you call it? When you're insecure, your own insecurities kind of overshadow things that.
Yeah. Well, not everybody's a performer like us, where it's like da 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 da. Let's do a show.
Business like so.
Yeah. Right. Curtain up. Da, da, da. Like that's the kind of kid I was.
Yeah, I know. I'm terrible too. But there's room for people like that in the world, because how else would anything get done?
I guess that's true. That's true.
Where would all the plays be? And Rent would never have happened. And Cats. And I'm not taking credit for that, but it's once I finally saw it, I thought, mercy, Lord, what? What is this?
Andrew Lloyd Webber, trippy man.
Yeah, he's taking something and he's not sharing. But it was popular. I will give it to him. It was very popular. But Stephen Sondheim's another one that, his musicals were his songs mostly, I think, are very kind of what do I want to call that? Like around the mulberry bush, kind of like you're not really sure. It's like, what does that mean? What am I singing? What does that mean? Is that a note? Is that note? Or do I have said no?
I would agree. That's very complicated music, but sometimes you kind of wonder narratively where it's going. At least with certain shows. I don't know. With Into the Woods, I think I felt that way. Even the characters sometimes in that movie were like, what am I doing? What song am I singing? Am I in the right story? I don't know. And then you just kind of like, yeah, that's how I feel while I'm watching this.
And you never know what key you're in, because it's,
right.
To ignore what key you're in, just be in the moment. It's like, no, that's kind of hard. You got to look at you because they think you're flat or whatever. I don't know. And I'm supposed to sing that. Just tell them it's Stephen Sondheim. That's all you need to know.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so, and then in the 80s, you had a lot of that, believe it or not. I mean, I know you believe it because you lived it, but there were the music of the 80s was shows. Okay, so, all right. So I'm not going to. Some of the music of the 80s is very eccentric. Did I pronounce that correctly?
It's
very
eccentric.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know what else I was adding on to that, but just roll with it.
There's a lot of eccentricity. Yeah. Okay. Either way.
But yeah, and I think that's what I loved about it. I just, Islands in the Stream and Peter Cetera and Amy Grant and all of those normal little duets and people were okay. That was great. But no, I wanted to hear some hardcore weirdness. I wanted to hear, the Smiths, and I wanted to hear Susie and the Banshees with Spellbound. And I wanted to hear, all of these things that people shied away from and went, oh, what are they doing? What's wrong with their hair? Why do their clothes look like that? It's just like, I
would agree. It was far more experimental. than anything that was going on at the time. But that, you were kind of free then. If you were free to be weird, it was okay, and I liked that also. I liked weird.
Yeah. I didn't realize I had liked weird up until, I probably heard. Now, I'm not going to say that, I was always like that, because I wasn't. I wasn't allowed to be weird growing up, even though I was. I was always told, well, first of all, mind your own business. That was one of the main sticks in our house. I don't speak until you're spoken to. You don't have to be in the same room to hear what I'm saying. Like company came over. That was one of my mom's favorites. You don't have to sit here to listen to what we're saying. You can go in the next room. And I'm like,
yeah, thanks a lot.
Okay. So that means I can listen. I just don't have to sit here and listen. Gotcha. And then I found out after a while that the stories just kind of replicated themselves, and it got boring. So I ended up leaving before they even got there, just so I could avoid, having to listen to whatever they were gossiping.
Well, by then you knew what you were missing, so it didn't have the same charm.
No, right. You're absolutely right. So then, music, of course, becomes kind of your companion, for one, as you get older. And then it's your savior, for two, because life gets harder as you get older, and the more you interact with people at school or in your family and the things that are happening all around you that you don't have any control over. It's just like, I know, I'll go put on a song. That'll cheer me up, and being a child in the 60s and 70s, you had pretty much a limited, array of pop music. There was always, like the mainstream folks, like David Cassidy and Jackson 5. And
yeah, it was all very kind of vanilla AM radio. You really had to dig for anything cooler than that.
Yeah. And I was very lucky. I had two older brothers, and I had their influence, mainly because, they told me, it's like, you don't need to listen to this crap. And I'm like, why are you calling it that? It's really, it's nice. I like listening to Jackson 5. I like, listening to, it was another family that, well, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. They were more of the 80s. Kind of like an Italian family. I can't remember. But anyway, it was all the family, and I never listened to the
Oh yeah, Tony DeFranco. And, right? The DeFranco kids.
The Franco family, yeah.
Yeah, and the Osmonds and all that.
Yeah, it's like I couldn't listen to the Osmonds because, they were in direct contrast with Jackson 5, and there was like, factions that were created. At school, there's like, are you Team Jackson? They didn't say that back then, but it would have had that term, and or you Team Osmond or whatever. And it's just like, no, they were vanilla to me. They were like massively vanilla, and I just realized in the eclectic family that I grew up in, it was just like I had no room for them, to be. I would listen to Vicky Carr before I'd listen to the Osmonds. Just saying.
Okay.
Anybody knows who she is. No,
I remember.
Oh, good. Yeah, because when I saw Moonstruck for the first time, and the dad puts on the Vicky Carr album.
Right, and the mother was yelling at him, you listen to those Vicky Carr albums all day long.
I know. It's like, you go ahead and listen to Vicky Carr, honey. It's okay. Drown your sorrows in Vicky. She understands. I thought, oh my God, I'm losing my mind. But so, with a brother's influence, I don't know if you had any influence in, family when you were a kid, but it kind of opened my eyes to different things around me. Because if you're in a nucleus, musically, and I guess psychologically, you're just going to tunnel vision everything is, catering to you. And then when I discovered like Kool and the Gang, Jungle Boogie, this was back in the and then my brother gave me Superfly soundtrack with Curtis Mayfield. That's not a child's album, by the way. Anybody out there that has it, just don't let children listen to that, because it comes from the movie, and it's a lot of the things that he's singing about is like extremely adult, and it's very street and raunchy and not, suburban things that, happen to little kids that, go to elementary school. They're just really raw and very in your face, because they're basically, talking about, pimps and hookers and hitmen and all kinds of things like that.
Yeah.
So I don't think my mother ever knew I had it, but, I don't think she would have cared, to be honest with you.
No censorship back then, I guess, on the record labels. But
yeah, no, none whatsoever. It's like, God, please don't let your kids listen to this.
It was kind of fun in the 70s when, I was into that disco era when we would go to the Bugsy Malone's ice cream disco and dance. And
yeah,
it was when we were really young, and it was like an underage club, like they only served you soda, but but you could still go and dance to all that Saturday Night Fever type stuff with it. Funky stuff, Earth, Wind, and Fire, and, like you said, Kool and the Gang and that kind of thing. But then, once you got to 80 or 81 or 82, you started hearing all this other weird stuff,
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have older siblings. It was just me. I was the oldest sibling. And it was very, for a while, Long Island was a very WBLI AM radio type of town, I don't even think we got FM radio in my house till I was be 14 or 15.
Wow.
So then suddenly you started hearing all this new weird stuff, and it really shook the heck out of you when you're used to hearing Neil Sedaka and Paul Anka on the radio and stuff, and you start hearing stuff from the Talking Heads or the B-52s, or even Joe Jackson and the Cars.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, this is for me.
Yeah. The first time I heard Stepping Out, I was in Germany. I was listening to probably Casey Kasem or something like that. Or I could have been listening to the Armed Forces Radio Network, and they played it, and I thought, oh my goodness, who is this? And I didn't know anything about him. You couldn't Google anything, so you had to kind of
Yeah, that's true. We were on our own with finding this music.
Yeah, you would have to hopefully be able to catch who sang it. And then maybe, next time you're at the PX, see if he has an album or something like that. And it was very limited, in your ability to know these things. Unless, you had a record store, in a neighborhood, which we did. Of course, in the 70s was the last time I was at a record store before, I joined the Army. So it was new stuff, but I didn't know.
Sadly, they disappeared.
Yeah, and I didn't know what to look for. So if I could go back in time, can you imagine going back in time and going to a record store right on the cusp of, say, 81 or 82?
How much fun would that be?
Oh my gosh.
It was fun at the time, and it'd be that much more fun now that you can't do it.
I know. Knowing what you know now with the musical historian brain, that we've acquired, and I need a wheelbarrow, just to take all the albums out of it. It would be like, oh my God, what the hell? Where did all these people come from? And they were there the whole time. I don't know. I know you can't go back in time. No, I'm not working on a time machine, people. Come on. But, it's always nice to think about things like that. But then, so Joe Jackson. So I started making a mixtape. I remember Joe Jackson was on it. And then Marty Ballin, Hearts, was on it because I love that song. And then what else? I think was the Cars on it? They might have been. I tried to keep it, pretty mainstream, but every so often something would come on and I'd be like, ooh, what's that?
Yeah, well, I lived on Long Island, and once you got to 1979 or 1980, there were one or two radio stations that actually started playing this new music and made that their brand.
Yeah.
And I didn't even realize it at the time, but they were like, besides like K Rock in Los Angeles, these WLIR and WDRE on Long Island, they were the only places in the country that were playing these songs
Yeah.
back in like 1979. And this movement, kind of like grew out of the punk movement, which was what, like 1976, 1977. So none of this had been around very long at all. And looking back on that, I finally started to hear that music because I was able to like go out to other places than my house. Like I said, I don't even think we had FM. We even got FM radio. We didn't even have a stereo for a while. We had nothing at my house. We were deprived.
So sorry. Gosh, I feel bad.
But I went out and started working, at day camp, and they would play songs on the radio, in the break area, and it was just kind of like a whole new world opened up.
Yeah. Yeah. And when it does, it's like you feel like you know a secret, like it's like I know this secret
Exactly.
that no one else knows, and I'm keeping it to myself. But then you really can't, because you get somebody like Blondie,
Mm-hmm.
and you hear her for the first time. And I actually heard Blondie for the first time with Heart of Glass when I went to New York. It was playing on the radio. I don't remember, what station it was or anything. I remember driving across the turnpike, from Jersey to New York and going into the, I want to say Holland Tunnel. Don't get me lying, I don't really remember. But
yeah, well, that or the Lincoln, whichever one it is that you would. There's only a couple. Yeah.
Yeah, because we were headed toward the Lower East Side of Manhattan. So,
Okay.
of course, the minute you go into the tunnel, the radio stops playing. But, and I heard that, and I was just like, who is that? It's Blondie with her number one hit, Heart of Glass. And then I'm just like, then I find out that Blondie is like a band. It's like Alice Cooper.
Gotta love it. Yeah.
It's a band. And I thought, oh my gosh, I like her. I just liked her presence, and then I found out later, very later in life that, they were punk. And they had this presence at CBGB's along with the Ramones and people like that, the New York Dolls and
the Police and the Talking Heads. Yeah. These were just like the pioneers of this whole movement.
Yeah, and then you find out about CBGB's itself and what a dump it was, and I just like, I had no idea, because I remember talking to somebody at work one day and I was just like, he was from New York and he, relocated and he came Washington. I'm like, wow, that's a disparate culture shock, I can imagine. And he's like, oh, he says, you're telling me. And he was talking about, being in New York. And what was it like? Because now that I'm older and I know, like in my 40s, I'm talking to this guy. And he's like, I said, did you ever go to CBGB's? He goes, oh my God, girl, are you kidding me? He's like, who didn't go to CBGB's? And I just like mildly raised my hand.
I went to a decent amount of clubs in New York City, but I did not get to CBGB's. I think it was kind of past its prime by the time I was old enough to go out to those places. Or by the time I worked in New York City in like 1986, 87, maybe a little bit of 88. So it was later in the decade. But I've been to a lot of creepy clubs, but they were great. They were just, it was an experience.
Yeah. And, the fact that, it's, I have this, I don't know, I have this fondness for New York City that I have no idea. Probably watching too many movies, I think. And I don't know where it comes from, but I think a lot of really cool things, came out of New York City. I mean, like Andy Warhol for one, and Greenwich Village. And I just remember all of these references and you're never getting to see any of them. But, hearing about them and reading about them in stories and seeing them in movies. And I don't know, it's just, I found out later, it was so weird. I found out later that, New York City, got a makeover. They got cleaned up and people were actually moving into the boroughs like the Bronx and Brooklyn and places like that.
Yeah, it's changed a lot. It was much more grungy back when I worked there.
It ruined it.
Yeah, it was. It was scary. It was dangerous. I mean, I'm sure it's still dangerous in places. I mean, it's a huge city. But, you know, it was like you were always just kind of taking your life in your hands when you went out.
Yes, definitely
Why?
were. And there's so many, like, I know I've told the story on, I won't regale you with it because I know it's on repeat constantly, because one of the few memories that I have of being in New York City, I was out walking our dog. I had just gotten out of the service, and we're staying in my sister-in-law's basement, and we had this German Shepherd, and I got up to go take her out, and it was 3:30 in the morning, and you'd never know it. People are standing on the corner chatting or walking up and down, and it's just like smoking and nodding hello, nice dog type of thing. And I'm like, am I like in a time warp or something? Why did you just...
No. So nothing closes. Nobody goes to bed. It's true. And I posted something about that recently. Was thinking, because I found, you know, I have this big envelope of stuff that I saved from the 80s. So like I've been pulling stuff out and posting pictures or whatever. And I posted something from like an invitation to the Limelight, and told the story where I had brought somebody there. He actually had shown up in New York City, and I surprised him because his band was playing someplace, and I found out about it. And after they were done, me and my friend said, okay, let's go out somewhere. And it was like midnight or something. And he was from Philadelphia. So he looked at us and said, well, it's almost midnight. You're going out now? And we like laughed at him. We were like, you're in New York now, sweetheart. Sometimes we don't even get dressed to go out till midnight.
Exactly. Oh my God.
No, get in the car. We're going to the Limelight.
Yeah. Let's go. Come on. Bundle up. Let's go.
Well, that was one hell of a night, though, I'll tell you. It was crazy.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. That sounds amazing. It's so weird. I was just telling my friend, who lives in South Africa, by the way, but he doesn't have a podcast, so it wasn't him. That my daughter and I, the first time I went, because I'm a homebody, believe it or not. I mean, even my wild days were pretty tame. So I've just never been that person. I think I was like a reincarnated monk or something. I don't know. But I remember my daughter, the first time I went, she asked me, she said, if I want to go to the gay bar downtown. And I was just like, I guess, what do they do there? She's like, well, mostly drink and dance. I'm like, okay. She goes, every so often a drag queen will walk in. And I'm like, oh, that sounds like fun. Because I'm not, really wasn't really up on the culture. This was like, I don't know, it wasn't that long, 15 years ago, I guess. And so here I am, asking. I was like, okay, so shall we be ready? What time is the bar open? And she's like, 4. I'm like, that's a little early. She goes, well, yeah, Mom, it's just the bar opening. I'm like, do people start, wafting in like about 6? She goes, no, they do not, Mom. This is a gay bar, first of all. It is a bar, so the only thing you're going to get between 4 and 6 is like hardcore drinkers and the people that work there. The fun doesn't start happening till about 10:30. I'm like, why so late? She goes, because that's when it happens, Mom.
People
I'm like,
are nice.
I'm in bed by then. She goes, okay, so here's an option. Go to the gay bar and have fun. Be ready to leave by 10. Or stay home and go to bed. I was like, ooh, harsh.
Well, see, now I could never live like that, obviously. But I was that person once when I was young. It's like, I don't know, I kind of felt as a young person that like if like you would miss something if you didn't do that. There's stuff out there that's going on, and it's going on without me, and I don't want to miss it.
There you go. And I think that is the attitude to have, truthfully, because that is so childlike. It is just so, when you're a kid, and you want to wait up for Christmas, you want to wait up for Santa.
Yeah, kind of. It was like the teenage version of that, or the
there you go.
Post-adolescent version, maybe.
Post-adolescent version of don't want to miss a thing, So whoever sang that, I can't remember. I think that was Smith. But they had the right idea. Not 80s though, but we had the right idea. But yeah, so it was new. It was all new and different. And the person I was with at the time didn't necessarily share my enthusiasm for new wave and 80s music and things like that. They kind of peaked in the 70s, I think, and they just stayed there.
So can I ask you that, did that become an issue like in your relationship? Because I kind of feel like, well, that like we new wave people, like either you were a headbanger or you were a new wave person, and that kind of defined who your friends were and where you went and what clothes you wore. And sometimes it was hard to make a crossover into the other tribe, you know?
It was. And I'm just going to say this, and I've never really given it much thought, so thank you for bringing that to the forefront. And I'm being snarky, I'm being completely honest. I had to hide who I was. A lot of my friends didn't really, it was a certain circle of people. I'm kind of like one of those people, I don't search for people, so I don't look for other people to hang out with. If they're there, then it's like, okay, well, I'll be friends with you, and then we can go and do stuff. So the culture in the 80s, in my world, was more of a dance club, R&B kind of a mix with the people that I hung out with, because that's what they listened to. And while MTV was, bold and sassy, and VH1, I kind of got the feeling that they weren't very accepting of people like Kate Bush and, Spandau Ballet. And I remember once my friend came over to visit me, and I was watching VH1, and Flock of Seagulls was on, and they were doing Iran, of course. And I'm like, oh my God, this guy cracks me up. I was like, look at him when he's playing the keyboard. He's got that one finger. He's just really into it. That really just kind of, endeared me just to the whole movement itself. And she goes, what the hell is that? Hair. She's like,
I know, but
what's he wearing? The girl.
They were freaky with the hair over their faces and stuff. That was.
And I thought, oh my God, she's opposed to what I'm listening to. Oh, uh-oh. I was like, all right. So it was like, okay, well, here's MTV. I'll be sure is on. So you'll get it. Yeah, now we're talking. And I'm just like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like you have to go out there and find your people. Well, I don't know. I went away to college in Pennsylvania I grew up on Long Island, which is, like you find these things and these things are reflected in the book too. But I kind of found that the people who were finding this budding movement out in Pennsylvania then were like attracted to me, kind of. And I don't mean like attracted like romantically or anything. I mean like we found each other, and I was like, wow, you're from New York? What are they doing in the clubs out there? Tell us all about it.
Yeah. Because it's like all of a sudden, you feel this sense of exhilaration. It's just like, oh, people that know stuff like I know stuff, and they're in this because like I'm into that. I didn't find those people. Well, I found that person in my husband, finally.
Well, good.
Richard. And it was like, he knew everybody. It was amazing, because he was from Scotland. So, being in the UK, they're going to know. And then he hit me to a lot of, even though he was into punk, and rock and stuff like that, he was there when the, BBC radio, was playing, and he knew all of everybody. And he would say, oh, and the next time he's like, you're at such and such. He's like, find this person, and look into and he's like rattling off all these people. And I'm just like, I've never heard of any of these people.
Yeah, but once somebody mentions it once, then like you have heard of them. Then like you have the inside scoop because you've heard of them. I remember that being a thing where like people would be like, have you heard of so and so? Do you know this band? Blah blah blah, and you could say, I've heard of them, and then you were cool. It was like, yeah, you're right. It was like a secret society, and we all kind of judged each other by who knew what bands and who was able to find what EP in the record graveyard. It was it was competitive, but in a really fun way.
It really was. And then it was like, okay, so I became this obsessed person. Like he would mention like a punk band. I'm like, oh, you mean like the Clash. And he's like, no. He's like, I'm like, well, the Clash were punk. He goes, initially. And I'm like, what does that mean? And then it's like he started, digging a little deeper, like how they kind of transitioned from punk into reggae. And I'm like,
Man, people would get kind of like, I don't know, snobby about the new music because it's pop, because the Combat Rock tour, it was a hit record. So
yeah, he's like, he's like, you're the Ramones, like people like the Ramones and the Sex Pistols. He's like, they're not from the 80s. He's like, they're from the mid 70s, late 70s. He says, and they were wrong, those lines, and they had the one of the initial factors in punk music. He says, but anything after that, truthfully, after the punk movement was over, he says that's post-punk.
Yeah, exactly. That's post-punk and like new wave and the new romantics and that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
was all post-punk. But then that's what blew up, and that was a lot of fun. And it was more accessible than just the punk rock stuff, even though it kind of felt like it's had the same roots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So crazy.
And it was weird. I love that you were just allowed to be weird. It was just like encouraged. And I almost felt like, okay, I'm weird, but I really need to step up my game. These guys in Devo are wearing freaking planters on their heads. I don't.
Yeah.
I got to step it up.
Yeah. And it was just, of course, it was the mainstays that, you were familiar with, like Duran Duran. Everybody knew, Spandau Ballet may not have been, on the same course, even though they were in direct, competition, I think, with Duran Duran. But then you found people like, mercy, Lord, help me, the Jam. The first time I heard the Jam, I was like, who's this? And it was like, every time I found somebody, I'd rush into her. Where's Richard? Who are these people? He's like, yeah. He's like, yeah, they're kind of like a mod. They're mod. And I'm looking at him like, blink, blink, blink. I don't know who. He's like, yeah, that's.
But once again, there was no way to look this stuff up, really. Yeah. You had to maybe go to a record store, like you're saying, and search around and see if you could find albums and see what's on the liner notes. And maybe there's a guy at the counter who knows about this particular band. Like, there was no authority. There was no. We had to be our own authorities and kind of network with each other.
Exactly. And once the internet kicked in, and it was really going strong, and you had browsers that actually took you to places instead of other ads, AOL. Not mentioning any names, of course.
Okay.
Then it was like, and you were able to find everything. And then,
you can find a concert tour, whatever you wanted. You can see, who changed his hair color,
Exactly. And then you get, unfortunately, it was during that time where you had things like whoever the first downloading music sharing people were, I can't ever remember them.
I think it was Napster. Wasn't Napster the first one to do like the MP4s?
Yeah. Yes.
And everything was free and people going crazy because all the nobody's getting none of the artists were making any money off of anything anymore.
Oh, I know. And it was so amazing because then LimeWire, kind of did it a little better. They had a little twist on it, so I was able to find, it's just like, so now I have an entire Aha album instead of just one song, that I recognize, and that was like one of the first albums that Richard bought me. It was either a birthday present or Christmas present he bought me.
No wonder you're such a devotee of
Yeah.
I mean, besides the fact that they have great, that was a really cool song.
Oh, and then it was just like, I want more. He's like, oh, well, he says, if you want more, then he's like, their second album, Scoundrel Days. He's like, that's the best one, I think. I'm like, really? So then I had to get that, and then I had to get the one after that. And then, it's like, they have like 12, 13 albums, And
I had no idea.
I was obsessed. I was obsessed with what I didn't know, and every day, God sends, there's somebody that says, hey, did you know that so-and-so used to play with such and such, and then they broke off and they got their, and I'm like, what?
Yeah, there was a lot of like cross-pollination going on between the different bands, where one would start with this one and then he moved to that one and then they changed the name and, and oh, this one was in love with that one and then they broke up, so he had to go to a different band. But
Yeah. And it happened everywhere, and that's why, I always jokingly say, like, there's like really only 5 real bands.
And they all just like plugged into different places. Different members went to different places. But no, it might have been that way for a while. It's true.
It's like that. What is that commercial? And then she told 2 friends, and she told 2 friends, and so on.
Yeah, that's for Fabergé shampoo or something. But no, but the thing is, I chose to write about this time in history because that was so unique and it was so much fun, and we felt such ownership of it at the time. Like, we were our own subculture, and you really had to work at it to find this stuff out and to find the music that you wanted, and it was exciting, and I wanted to maybe be able to like bottle that and let people, and so it's a story about someone who's real ambitious and wants to get their art career started and ends up in a love triangle, and is going to concerts and all the things that happen along the way when she falls for this kind of daredevil guitarist. But it's all in that world of, all these new songs and this new music and everything being just so exciting and such a prize if you found some new band or new artist or new version of the song that they only play in the clubs, in California.
Yeah. Oh, this is true, because I found out very quickly, and to this day, I still don't know why, and nobody will tell me. But if you go into the gay bar that I go to, the Silverstone, and you request, Right Said Fred, I'm Too Sexy, not only do they give you a dirty look, but they just slowly shake their head and say, please choose something else. At the first time, I pushed back, and I said, but that's such a great song. He goes, please choose something else. And I'm just like, oh, okay, I get it. And then I picked like something like Karma Chameleon or something like that. And then even then, it was just like they had such like a following there of certain bands that they played. He's like, we'll play Erasure. And I'm like, oh, okay, thank you. That's not really where I was going, but
but you couldn't like break the rules of what they considered palatable music, songs that they sanctioned, I guess.
I was told later that, if you tip them, they'll pretty much play whatever you want. I'm like, no, they won't.
Oh, that's okay.
They still refuse to play I'm Too Sexy. I said, but I did get them to play Boy George, which was great. So
okay.
My daughter just snapped at me.
Boy George was fun.
Boy George was a lot of fun. And he still is,
Yeah. I saw him not too long ago at Music Fest out here. He was so much fun. I just laughed through the whole thing. Because they sang, of course, the songs are great. He doesn't sound exactly like he used to, but he's just really funny. He's just a freaking funny guy.
Very dry, very droll. And that was like a lot of the things that I appreciated in like the music culture, like Morrissey, for example. He was, and still is, one of the snarkiest entities in the music industry, and he just works it into his music so well.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I hadn't listened to him for a while because I listened to the Bona Drag album, which is a compilation of like a lot of the hits that he did with the Smiths and him in general. And so I hadn't listened to that for a while. And then I can't remember what I was listening to on Spotify, and Girlfriend in a Coma came up.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that one in a while. So, I started playing it. And then I wanted to hear more because, your ears get accustomed to certain things, and it's like an addictive drug. It's just like, okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I want to listen to them, and I want to listen to, Spandau Ballet. I want to listen to OMD.
Yeah. You have to like feed the fire.
You do. It's feverish because it never ends. It never ends. And it's a good thing, because I think for the longest time, and I still haven't watched it in its entirety, But High Fidelity, that movie with John Cusack and Jack Black. It was really hard to get through like the first 10 minutes of it. My son wanted me to watch it, and then I was like, I don't know. And then
Yeah, I have not seen that one, although I've heard good things.
yeah, I had a really difficult time with it because of what a music elitist John Cusack was. And I didn't really think I was that person. Because I can listen to, Joy Division and then turn right around and listen to Walking on Sunshine by Katrina and the Waves. So I didn't really have that snobbery, that, some people have against like pop music and things like that. Like my brothers, don't listen to that crap, you listen to something that has more meaning to it. I was like, I'm 11. How much more meaning do I need to have in my life? Yeah, but they're trying to prepare you for life in general, and you're just like, I just want to listen to something fun. Where's the banana splits? I want to listen to them. But
the banana splits. I remember the banana splits.
La, la, la,
Oh, that's funny. La,
yeah.
la, la, la. La, la. They were a little scary. I'm not.
They were.
I was young. They were like creepy, costumes.
Creepy.
And they didn't talk. It's like somebody took away their powers of voice.
Yes, and they always had the same expressions on their faces.
Right. And they would just like bonk each other with things and make, to make the terrible noises. I don't know. Maybe I was a little too young for that.
Yeah, I think it was all in that time, because they weren't Sid and Marty Krofft entities, but they were around that era, with Sig, the Sea Monster, and the other one with Witchy Poo. And
oh, I love that one.
Yeah,
see, now I was young enough for that.
yeah, and it was just the whole idea of having this outer world that everything was normal to them, but not to people watching it. People watching are going,
yeah, that's an interesting way to put it.
That's normal. Okay, I don't want to live where you do, but witches fly all over and put spells on people. Of course, you get older and you're like, oh yeah, that actually happens for real. But they don't use a broom though. But yeah, so it's the 80s. I think, my daughter and I have this conversation probably at least once a year, but it epitomized so many things. There were so many cultures and environments and things that occurred, because what was happening in the U.S. wasn't happening in the U.K. They were suffering, with, inflation and Margaret Thatcher. And of course we had, Ronnie Reagan in the beginning, but, it was like.
I do remember a lot of unrest at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And unfortunately, I think that's where they're at right now too.
Oh yeah. Probably worse at this moment in time, but
yeah. I don't know. I just.
This going back to the original unrest, I guess.
Well, yeah, because if it's not one thing, it's something completely different. And then out of unrest comes, creativity, so it would be interesting to find out the music that's being created now,
That's a good point.
Bands
That's a good point, because I always felt that the whole punk music movement, that's really what it was. It was that young people saw that they had no future. There was no work for them. They were kind of disrespected, and they felt like the whole world had been screwed up for them. So now they were going to kind of get like, look what you did to me, world. I'm going to get back at you now. I'm going to scream about anarchy and play my guitar really obnoxiously.
Yeah.
And paint my face and do my hair straight up in the air. And
oh, I know. It's just, there's going to be other things, because you think you've seen it all, but you really haven't. And it's just like it's gone beyond, the tattoos and the piercings and the loud music. And, I'm just
like, what's left? I don't know.
Yeah, because at some point I think, with the 60s, with the end of the 60s, I guess because of the culture that a lot of the boomers came out of, with the 50s, and everybody was clean cut, and moms wore dresses and high heels, when they did housework and, things like that. And then all of a sudden here you got the 60s where it's like the low cut jeans and the no shoes and the long hair, and everybody was just appalled at, the love movement and things that were coming out of that. And of course, they had to answer for Vietnam, and they didn't have any answers because, nobody was in charge of that except the government. And the kids were throwing it into their faces. You're just like, what are you going to do about this? This is your problem, and you're leaving it to us. So we're rebelling. We're just going to have protected sex, and we're going to burn our bras, and we're not going to wear nice clothes to church on Sunday. So there,
Yeah. It's true.
And then you get, closer towards the 80s, and it's just like, yeah, well, we're taking it one step further. We're going to rip our clothes and put safety pins in them to close the holes up. And then we're going to spike our hair with, mustache wax, and we're going to start a band that makes absolutely no sense and screams at people. And hopefully people have fist fights in the audience, and then we
throw beer bottles at each other and
on top of
bleed on the fans.
Exactly. Not only are we not going to be able to sing, but we can't play our instruments either. So
I think they learned eventually.
They did.
From what I hear, yeah. I've seen the docudrama, they did learn eventually.
I know they did. But, at the beginning, it wasn't something that was necessary.
It wasn't the priority. The attitude was the priority.
There you go. The attitude, the look, the persona, that was the priority. It was like, in your face. Take that, you imperialist weirdos. With your stiff shirts and your high collars and your button-down shoes. And
they were all still quite, stiff upper lip there in England. And I guess a lot of them still are. But, not the young people were not at the time. That was what they were fighting against.
That was totally what they were fighting against, And so it just goes on with every generation, I think. You just wait. You just wait for the newest thing, kind of with bated breath, those of us, and I'm just going back, I say those of us, and then perhaps the people of the 60s, the deadheads and, people in that era that were the hippies are waiting, for something to emerge other than the occasional bell-bottom outfit that somebody dug out of their mom's closet, with the hippie band that they wear. And
the fringe.
Fringe, yeah, with the boots and all of that, Something, they were waiting for something. And I think probably, maybe we're those people. Maybe they were those people that are waiting for something to reoccur that, brings us joy and remembrance, because each generation has its own thing. I don't know if people of the 50s are still waiting for Elvis, but I don't think he's coming back.
Yeah, I guess not.
Every so often you'll get a cool movie with some guy in it nobody knows, and then that'll be your, it's a little bit too much information, though. I think it's just like, can't we just focus on the music and not the lifestyle? Because Elvis, I think, was a really formidable force in his own right. And I think anyone who has to do this for a living, I think about these things and do these things for a living, and you tour and you write songs and you have people tell you what to do. And then you try and incorporate real life into that. You get married, you have kids, things like that. It's,
it doesn't quite work, does it?
No, it doesn't, because you don't have the freedom because you're responsible for other people, so it's.
Yeah. And you're under a microscope all the time, and your whole perspective is warped, and you're probably too young with more money than anybody that age is ever supposed to have. So.
Yes. And then you don't absolutely know what to do with this. That's why you have gold-plated toilet seats and staircases, and it's like, what the hell do I want now? It's just like I want all.
Yeah. It's a dilemma. It doesn't always make people happy. Let's put it that way.
No, it doesn't. But that's what we have the music for.
True.
I think, and we have people like you that take us to a simpler time and write about people's lives that we probably would have never even met. And Jessica sounds like such an amazing person.
Great.
I can't wait to read more about her life and her friends. And
it's fun. It's a fun read.
It is a fun.
It is.
It's late,
but it's
George.
But it's not fluffy. It's not just like fun and games. It's a lot of thoughtfulness as far as what do I do with my life? How do I become the person I want to be? Yeah. And what's the meaning of creativity? How am I going to contribute anything decent to this world? So
exactly. And apparently it doesn't matter, according to TikTok, how long it takes you, because there's people out there older than me that have, productive TikTok channels, and all they're doing is telling people everything's going to be okay. And I love you and we're going to make it. And they've got millions of followers. So it's just like, okay, well, thanks, Grandma.
Well, the message is appreciated.
It is.
I'm glad that something positive is taking off out there in social media, because, the negativity that's been out there is just ridiculous.
Yeah. And I don't think and I think, okay, so this is me. I'm just saying this because I don't consider myself a negative person. And I know I probably have every right to be, with my history and family relationships and things like that, but I chose not to go in that direction. And I think people who feed on that's kind of their personality anyway. Like they feed on the Hollywood gossip. They're the first ones to tell you that Kanye West lost their, sponsorship from Adidas. And I'm just like, I don't actually, sorry. And,
I think positivity is a lot of work.
It is. It is.
It sounds like it should just happen naturally, but it just does not. It does not.
Yeah, it's a choice. It's a choice, truthfully. It's a choice whether you listen to, the Osmonds or the Jacksons. I mean, is your favorite, whatever grooves you. The Jacksons just happen to be Motown. So, I got a lot of joy listening to that. And in the 80s, of course, like I said, with like Simple Minds or OMD or, people like that, they had messages in their music. Not that I'm saying other people didn't, but they had messages in their music, and it was important for them to let other people hear that, Yeah. And sometimes people say, well, how is it that you're always playing your old stuff and you never write any new music? And I don't know if you have an answer for that. And if you do, I'd like to hear what your answer is before I say what mine is, because
as far as writing to new music or listening to new music,
writing. If you're a big band from the 80s,
why aren't they writing? Well, I think some of them are writing new music, but people still want to hear the stuff that they remember,
Right.
So, and I think once you're past that point where you have all that energy going on, that you're starting your life and you're building the network of people you want to be around you, maybe you don't have such a need to be that creative anymore, so that's why that tapers off, because you've kind of found a place in life and you're not as in conflict as you were.
Bravo, sister. Bravo. Because my answer was, I think at the time they had to say what they had to say. And I think anything after that would kind of overshadow the importance of what they were experiencing. So if it's about
I'll buy that.
a love and compassion, or if it's about, anti-apartheid, or if it's about war in Desert Storm, any of those things, if you're compassionate enough to create something to tell people, hey,
Sorry.
no, you're fine. This is wrong. This is right. Get it together, make a better person of yourself. Things like that. That's a mainstay. Our parents tell us that from day one. Now, remember, you go to school, behave yourself, and don't talk back to the teacher. Make sure, don't get in with the wrong crowd, because you get in trouble. Stuff like that. It's life lessons that are still pertinent to today, I think. Nelson Mandela may not still be here, but his truth lives on, So perhaps free Nelson Mandela doesn't, isn't a current song on the charts at the moment, but the sentiment's there. It's the freedom of the people, of South Africa, so they're not, downtrodden and repressed, and, they have the freedom to be who they are, as opposed to, being against them, be opposed to them for who they are, because everyone should be allowed to be an individual. And I think with new wave music, wherever it came from, whether it was the B-52s, Blondie, or, Duran Duran, Kaja Gugu, I think they all had their place, and we all had a place that liked that in our life for them, because it represented certain aspects. Because like you said, layers, we're not all one dimensional, we have more dimensions to ourselves. What flies one day doesn't necessarily fly the next day, so that's why you have a record collection, so you can engulf yourself in all of the aspects of creativity that's been thrown at us. I think it's great. I think it's great.
Very interesting.
Yeah. So I think we did really good today.
Yeah, we covered a lot of ground.
17 minutes. I'm trying to put your glasses on. 17. I think that's great. I think there's not really a whole lot that I need to cut out, but I wanted to talk to you just briefly, because I didn't actually look it up. It was one of those passive things that came to me on social media, and I don't know if you heard it or not, but I want an opinion because, well, I can. It's my show.
Okay.
Rumor has it that Disney is remaking the Never-Ending Story.
Now,
I'm
not big on remakes in general, if that's what the road you're going down.
Well, no, I want your opinion because, we did that whole podcast with Scott, when they did their reboot or the sequel to
Maverick. Yeah.
Yeah, we got an earful from that, but
Absolutely.
Yeah, but once again, it's opinion, so why not? Everybody has one, and he wanted to make sure his got heard, which is great. I didn't see it, so I probably have no desire to see it. But with something that's a bit more designed towards, our, mindset, Never-Ending Story is a classic to me, and I just felt like, really, Disney? Do you have to have everything? That's not fair.
I think it says something really sad about the current culture when really all they seem to be devoting themselves to is redoing things that already exist.
Yeah. It's like a dog pissing on a bush to me. It's like, okay, that's mine, and this one's mine, and this tree belongs to me, and it's just so they could put their brand on it and just take everything. That's really how I feel, honestly.
Yeah, well, I feel like if something was done and it was done well, I mean, does it really need to be revisited? I mean, I guess I did like that Maverick movie. That was a sequel. That's a little bit different than like completely trying to remake something.
Right.
It has a lot of the same issues if people are devoted to that original character and therefore don't want you to screw it up.
Yeah.
But yeah, to me, I have so much more respect for people who go out and create new content than someone who says, okay, we need to for some reason redo this movie that everybody's already seen just because we feel like we'll make money because it has an existing audience, or or we feel like we need to create some kind of new political point of view.
Yeah.
That's I don't think that's why the original piece was created. So
No, it
it's
wasn't.
not going to have the same end result.
No, it's not. And of course, because, I've got a musical brain, I'd like to think. I immediately thought of Lamal. I'm like, are they going to have him redo the song that was created for the story? Or are they going to try and flush some new person that's a little bit more mainstream, a little bit more, in your face, and have them do it, And I thought, no, I don't like that. And I was being actually very selfish when I said that. So I reached out.
Yeah, but you have a right to feel ownership of something that was meaningful to you,
Yeah,
and not feel, like you said, not wanting somebody to come over and piss on it and say, okay, now it's mine. We're going to do it this way. I think there's validity to that, to people's reactions in that way. And this wasn't even one of my favorite movies. I didn't see this till I was older. I didn't see it back in the day.
right.
But there's so many other things that I have seen people, and not always Disney. I don't know who. There's a lot of people remaking stuff. Like one of my favorite '80s movies is Heathers, and
Nice.
they tried to do some kind of reboot of Heathers, and it was just a dismal failure. And I just kind of wonder, why did they even bother?
My gosh.
It was such a unique film at the time, concept at the time. Why? Just the fact that you're remaking something unique, it kind of like takes the steam out of it. So,
right. Exactly. And Heathers is a really good example because it was very dark. And it was probably during a time when, stuff like that, maybe people thought about it, but they never really followed through. It was, because things get different as you get older, and situations.
yeah.
It's always bullies, but they step.
And I think it was actually based on a news story where there were like copycat suicides that had happened somewhere out in the Midwest. And now this obviously wasn't the same story, but like I think it gave the writer the idea to come up with this. So it's not like it was even that far-fetched or like it came out of nowhere.
Right.
But even so, to create a piece of art that expressed that so well, and so with so much irony and, like you said, darkness, but yet still comedy.
Yeah. And then, because with Never Ending Story, it was a bit simpler. It was like, okay, so Fantasia is disappearing and the nothingness is causing. It's the whole creativity of being an individual, and people are losing who they are, as individuals, and their creativeness, and I think that had more of a resounding impact, the way they created that, the way they did it, than, saying a story in a similar vein, but not quite, as creatively, as flamboyantly, I suppose, because you had Rock Monster, and then you had, I can't remember any of the characters, but Atreyu, of course, and Artax, and somebody actually mentioned that in a comment underneath the announcement, that, boy, I swear to God, if they drowned Artax again, he's like, I'm going to shoot somebody.
Yeah.
And that had to happen. It was very sad, because you had to be connected, at that moment. You had to feel his pain because you're reading the story, just like Bastian is reading the story, and he felt the pain, and so it's just like
the helplessness of that.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to go there.
I know it's dark. I mean, to bring up that point particularly, but it's just, I don't know. It's just such a brilliantly made story, and the fact they didn't have really a whole lot of mainstream characters, Gerald McRaney, I think he did a really good job as Bastian's dad. And the little gal that we interviewed that was the childlike princess. I think those people, really brought, the creativity and the innocence of it, to the forefront,
Mhm.
and
I can understand that there's an impulse out there in Hollywood to bring like all sorts of different perspectives to these older films. But the thing is, I'd rather you see somebody take that perspective and create something fresh that features that perspective. Then I have a lot more respect for somebody who can create that as opposed to recreate something else by infusing your view in there. And I'm happy for everybody and whoever wants to have whatever political views. And I'll go out to the gay bars with you. If you read the book, there's drag culture in the book. I'm all for it. But so let's make something that features that culture and tell a new story. And have somebody talented come up with something that features that. That's what I want to see. That's what I'm waiting for.
Well, and see, there you go. And I think, and you've done that. You've taken that mantle and you've run with it, and you created something just so amazing. I think that people are just, I read a lot of the reviews that you've gotten, and it's just like, this is amazing. This is great. I would have never thought of this. And wow, what a twist on what I knew about the 80s, because not everybody lived in the same place in the 80s. Could have had like a completely different culture. Maybe you lived down south in the 80s. Maybe your 80s was different, than other people's perspectives. So it's just like, why not learn about life while you're here? While you're still here, and learn about different people and where they're from and their lives and things that have taken place. And then the music is just the soundtrack to that. Pretty much.
Absolutely.
So, and with that, I believe
we've come a long way.
We've come a long way. We really have, and just, in general, I think, figuratively and literally. But at this point, I take a little cue from the Overlord, and I say, where are you on social media, Suzanne?
I'm all over. No, seriously, like, you can't get away from me. I'm a media whore. But in any case, you can try SuzanneMattaboni.com, SuzanneMattaboni. That's via email, or Suzanne@Mattaboni.com. Just SuzanneMattaboni.com is also my webpage. And then there's a separate webpage for the book, which is onceinaLifetimenovel.com.
That's awesome.
You can look at that. And I'm out there on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all that. Suze Mattaboni 80s and that kind of thing. So I'm not that hard to find. But
it's great.
Look, go out and look.
Go out and look now, right this second. Do it.
Yes.
So, and if anybody knows me, I'm sure all 7 of you people. I think I increased 1 listener since we've been talking. I'm 80s Music Girl everywhere. I am on Facebook. I have a fan page on Facebook. I do have a group that I'm starting for looking back. It will be on a platform here before the year ends. I promise. So it'll probably be Podbean or somebody like that. But I needed to get it out there. The words had to be said. The music had to be played. It was an urgent that I did this. So I may not be organized like some people, but I get it. I get there and I get it done. So Twitter, 80s Music Girl, Instagram, 80s Music Girl. Yeah, I'm on TikTok. No, I don't frequent it anymore because I've kind of lost interest, unfortunately. Although I love all the people that are there, I want to fight the urgency to be competitive. And I'm really not a competitive person. And that's
it's hard these days. Yeah, everything's competitive.
Yeah. And now, as luck would have it, thank you, YouTube, I am 80s Music Girl on YouTube. Because you can use user handles now. So it's very proud of that. Yeah. So, Suzanne, thank you so much for being on the show today. You're really I just love you anyway, and when you came to Bonsai Retro Club, you brought such a freshness. Not that I'm saying that Dave and Scott
Aw.
is stale, but it was just such a nuance, introduction. And, and I found out, like I said, sister from another mother. And, your exuberance and your enthusiasm just always lingers. And I just really appreciate that about you.
Aw, excellent.
And
Thank you. Well,
you're
yeah, it's always a lot of fun. I'm glad we could get together and bring back some of the fun moments. Bring back
absolutely
magic.
back to magic. Yeah. And I'm very excited about Once in a Lifetime. I can't wait to, start finishing the
Excellent.
rest of it. And then maybe we can come back and do like a I don't know, like a spin-off. Like, now that I've read it, what have I got to say? How do I feel? Like, maybe I've missed some things in the 80s, or maybe I didn't. Maybe I'm learning something new for the first time, which is great.
Hmm.
So, and we
I look
always
forward to
want to.
that.
All right. Well, you take care. I'm going to end this recording, and it was great chatting with you. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.
Okay, thanks. You too.
Welcome. Bye for now.
Bye.